Okay, I see that we have some attendees trickling in to our session showcasing research on your college application. We are so happy to offer this at the end of the day for our 7th Symposium of Rising Scholars. It has been just an amazing group of student research, a building of community, and a sharing of ideas that I hope will inspire all of us really to continue asking questions, continuing a life of the mind, and continuing to hone these abilities of research in whatever field we might be pursuing. My name is Dr. G.P. Laborde. GP stands for George Philip. I haven't figured out why I've been given the name HipLip on this Zoom call, but it's kind of cool, so we'll just roll with it. And basically, this is an opportunity for those of you who are interested in learning more about research broadly and why it's valuable to schools, as well as specific tactics for how you might feature that on your college applications. And in order to share the best techniques and practices, we are so delighted to have our colleague Purvi Modi, who is the CEO and director of Insight Education, which is an exceptional college admissions consulting team. We're going to let Purvi go through a presentation she's put together, and then we'll open up the floor for specific questions from all of you who are attending. You can drop them in the Q&A. And really, we just want to hear what you're thinking, what you're wondering, and to present ways that you can feature research in a really compelling way to share not only who you are, but who you want to be when you get to college and beyond. So with that, I'll hand it over to Purvi to share her presentation, and thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much, GP. It's great to be here. I hope all of you have been having so much fun, not only sharing your own projects, but also listening and seeing the presentations of your peers, and really seeing where their curiosities are taking them. So it's always really fun to see that. As GP said, my name is Purvi. I am the co-CEO of Insight Education. We are based in California and work with kids all over the world. And it's truly such a fun job working with you guys. But I do want to talk about specifically research and how your research can play a role in the admissions process, and also just why it's important for you in general. So let me go through a little bit here. So just a little bit about us. We have been doing this for a long time. My team and I have worked with more than 3,000 students. We've read so many essays you can't even imagine. We're already deep in the throes of like figuring out our the college application season this year, and we've already read more than 300 applications and countless essays. So it's just, we've been doing this for a really long time, and have seen so many different kinds of students come through our doors and go off to college, and it's really exciting. We keep in touch with them for a long time, see them off to go to graduate school and all of that kind of stuff. So let's talk about why students do research. And as a naturally curious person, I always really love going down these different rabbit holes, right? I hear about a topic and I'm like, oh, I want to learn more about that. And I go down this rabbit hole. And it would have been so wonderful when I were younger if I had had a resource to guide me through how to do that kind of research. And you guys are very lucky to have this resource, to have mentors, all of that. But why is research important? Well, one, you're getting really great hands-on experience. And really, when you think about the work that you're going to do, and you might not even think about this yet, but your parents might, is that when you're in the real world actually working, the work you're doing is hands-on. It's practical. It's going to require you to use problem solving. It's going to require you to be really creative. It's going to require you to be really thoughtful and out of the box to really succeed. So getting that kind of experience at such a young age is incredibly important for you. It's the application of knowledge. I don't know about you guys, but I often hear people asking me, when am I ever going to use this again in my life? And oftentimes I'm able to come up, well, you might not use this exact piece of knowledge, but the skill set that you're developing is going to be really valuable for you as you get older. So when you hear yourself asking that question, When am I going to use this novel that I'm reading? And when am I going to use this piece of history? Or when am I going to use this trig formula? Know that you actually will use it. You're developing your brain and your skill set. And same thing here with research. Major career exploration. Do you actually know what you want to do with your whole life? I'd love for you guys to like track what you think you want to do on a year-by-year basis. And then when you're older, what are you actually doing? When you're young, you get exposed to such a limited number of career pathways, majors, etc. You just really have no idea what's out there. I had a student who for a long time, she thought she was going to, she is actually in medical school now, but wants to be a doctor. She's like, I'm going to study bio or chemistry, and that's it. That's all she thought about. And then when she went to college, she started studying anthropological medical research. She had no idea that was even a thing. And it just happened to be a major available at her school that she got really excited about. Is still taking her down the pathways that she wants to follow, but it's just a different way to get there. So getting that exposure is really important, not so that you have to choose your final major, but just to see what's actually out there. Same idea, exposure to new ideas and topics and really exploring broadly. I often tell students there's this little bit of knowledge that you have, there's the knowledge that you know you don't have, and then there's this infinite universe of knowledge that's out there. And so really expanding your base is important. And admittedly, there's so much knowledge out there that nobody yet knows yet or hasn't discovered, but doing research is how we actually acquire that information and that knowledge. Chance to connect with a mentor. I think it's so important when you're young to have people that are older than you that can guide you. Your teachers are wonderful, your counselors are great, but somebody who might be in a field that you might want to pursue, amazing. Somebody who's maybe gone through that process more recently, somebody who might be doing research in a particular area that's really exciting to you. Learn from them, learn from their experiences, and it's really amazing for you to have that person to ask questions and to really help develop your own skills. And research, honestly, is a lifelong skill. You're going to use it in every capacity. And it really, I love this word that you just really never know where it can lead you. And, I'll give you an example. I had a student who started a project when he was in 8th grade, and he was studying how water can be purified in certain parts of the world. It ended up being a research project he worked on for 4 years throughout high school. He ended up studying environmental engineering at Columbia. He now works in the White House. Went to law school, always wanted to do law school, works in the White House working on their environmental policy. And it was sparked with this one little idea that he had. And it just took him, I wouldn't even call it a rabbit hole. Like, this has been his pathway in his career. And so it's been amazing for him. The project you're working on may not take you down that pathway, but it could, right? And so if anything, it's giving you exposure. So let's talk about how research can be shown on a college application. And before we do that, I do want to just step back for 1 second and talk about different kinds of research experiences. I think that so often when people hear research, they think of laboratory research or only science-based research, but research actually can be in every field. And so humanities, psychology, computer science, sociology, literature. So to give you a couple of examples, I had a student who did this amazing research project on the history and evolution of comedy in literature. She is an English major now at a top 5 university, but it was a really amazing opportunity and experience for her. I have another student who just started this year studying biomedical engineering at a top 10 university, and he suffered from an eye disorder. And he was talking about how this eye disorder, if you can catch it quickly, it's very resolvable. But there are people in rural areas that just don't have access the same way that you might have in an urban area or if you see a doctor regularly. So he worked on developing an app with his mentor that could be used to diagnose this eye disorder more easily, just literally through your phone. I have a student who did this really cool project about how the Nazis actually culturally appropriated music from Jewish people that they then used for Nazi propaganda, which was like a really amazing research project, something I'd never learned about in history. And so really you can do such a span of projects. And then how do you actually indicate those on your application? Well, so first, A very common one is your activities list. So whenever you end up applying to college, whether it's in 5 years or whether you're in the middle of it right now, you definitely want to make sure that your research is somewhere on your activities list. Colleges love to see this, to see outside of formal clubs and activities and things that you have to do, where are you spending your time? And I will give you a piece of recommendation. Oftentimes people just list their research project. Don't just list your project. Tell us why you love it. Tell us why you embarked on this particular idea. What did you learn from it? Really give a bit more detail there, but definitely there. Another part is additional information. So beyond it being on your activities list, if there's an opportunity for you to describe your research project, put it there. At most, you're giving colleges something interesting to read about you and about how you think, again, how you use your time and things that you're interested in. Your personal statement can be a great place to talk about your research and how it may be your entire personal statement. It may be a bit of your personal statement, and it could be really talking about your curiosity, how you find these different topics, how you show your interest, how you pursue knowledge. Supplemental college essays. So many colleges are now having these unique supplemental essays. One of them may be, what do you want to study and why at this school? What experiences have you had that lead you down this pathway? Your research could be a fantastic place to talk about. When I did research on X, Y, and Z, it made me think about a major I'd want to pursue. And then this is why I'm interested in this pathway. And now I'm looking at the work that you guys are doing at your university. And this is why I'm so excited about learning more at your college. So it could be a why essay. There's, some schools will tell us exactly about academic or research projects that you have embarked on. Cool. That's obviously a very natural place for that to go in. It could be a community that you're a part of, and now you're part of a research community. And so learning from your peers can be a big part of it. So really, your research can go in so many different areas. Interviews. Many of you will be doing interviews when you're applying to college. And this is a great place to talk about your research that you've done because it's just so unique and so interesting. And you're really going to capture the attention of either your alumni interviewer or your admissions officer interviewer, because they're like, wow, that's really cool. Tell me more about that. Because it's something, the work that you're doing is something nobody else can talk about. And it also shows so many of your amazing skills. And then recommendation letters. So whether you're getting a recommendation letter from potentially your mentor that you're working with, or you share your research project with, your teacher at school. So for example, this girl that did the project about humor, she showed her research paper to her English teacher. She talked to her English teacher about it. She got her advice, and she really connected with her English teacher on this. And when that English teacher wrote her letter of recommendation, she certainly included this outside work that the student had done in the recommendation letter. So don't be too shy and talking about the work that you're doing. The research isn't a silo. Share it with your teachers at school. They'll be so excited to see that you're taking what you're learning at school, combining it with something else, and then coming up with something greater. Definitely share that. And then, of course, thinking about courses that you might be interested in. You might say, when I did this research project, I'll give you an example. I had a student who did this really cool physics research project, specifically in astrophysics. Based on that, she ended up doing, more advanced physics, AP Physics C in her senior year. She might not have done that otherwise because she wasn't really sure if this was a pathway she was interested in. And it ended up being so exciting for her. She decided to choose this more rigorous pathway, which she was able to then detail in her application as well. So many different areas that you could put your work in. And I want to talk more broadly, and then we're going to open it up, is that I really want to talk about what are colleges looking for. Oftentimes people think about college applications, and parents, you're a little bit more guilty of this, and I get it from just in hindsight, but really thinking about a list of accomplishments. That's not actually what they're looking for. A student's list of accomplishments or activities are really only indicators of their strengths and their skill set. And so also shows, well, you did this project, or whether it's research or a sport or whatever it might be, what does that tell me about who you're going to be on a college campus? And so there's this term that we talk about called non-cognitive factors. it's something we've been talking about for, gosh, more than a decade. And it's something that's becoming more and more commonly talked about in just admission circles generally. But the idea that we're looking for problem solving, communication skills, creativity, leadership, curiosity, organizational skills, research, analytical skills. We sometimes refer to those in, the corporate world as soft skills or transferable skills. We're calling it non-cognitive factors, but these are skills effectively you want to develop that you're going to carry with you throughout your life. And these are the skills that are really being weighed heavily in the admissions process these days. And so your research right here, I would tell you that you're at least touching upon, out of these 7, at least 6 of these. And potentially leadership is the one that could be varied, depends on how you're promoting your research, the type of team you've worked in, but you're definitely problem solving as you're doing your work. You clearly had some stumbling blocks, hopefully, it's a good learning process. And you had to think through, how do I get beyond that? You've had to communicate not only with your mentor, but also in your presentation today. You had to be creative in coming up with your research question and also how you wanted to approach answering that research question. Your curiosity was the spark that hopefully led you to PolyJets in the first place. You had to organize your research. You had to be organized in terms of your meetings with your mentors, getting your work done on time, going through the process in a very organized, manageable process. And of course, how do you actually do the work? How do you get that knowledge, which is a research analytical skill? So just this one project is showing so many of the skills that colleges are already hoping to see in your application. So I really wanted to open it up for questions or comments, or GP, if there's anything you wanted to add.
Kirby, thank you so much. I am particularly fascinated by that last section on those non-cognitive factors that perhaps we think are really focused on putting things down on paper and showing the things that we've accomplished in a really itemized way. But it makes so much sense to us that colleges are not just looking for students who have accomplishments on paper, but who have all of these other less tangible skills that allow them to collaborate, to contribute to faculty research at the university or the college where they end up, and also to be a good community member, a good citizen of their college, helping the intellectual discourse amongst their peers as well. So Thank you so much for sharing that.
And it extends beyond college. It's also when they become members of the alumni community.
Absolutely. Just as a point on this, I do alumni interviews from my alma mater, Middlebury College. And the students that have really stood out for me are those that have something that they can talk about, some sort of passion or something in depth where it's clear they have really sophisticated and mature language, whether it be talking about a particular scientific concept that they know both how to use the fancy language and language to explain it to people that maybe not specialists, as well as those people that are just passionate about something and they just ooze that kind of interest and sincerity and authenticity about that quirky thing that only they know about. So I just wanted to return to that point to remind all of you who presented today, you now have this superpower. You stood up at our symposium, you presented, you were able to condense months of work with a brilliant scholar and share it with people who may or may not be experts in that field. That is on its own a great accomplishment. And so use that skill, celebrate that skill in the admissions process as well.
Absolutely.
Okay, yes, I would also love to open it up for questions. And so I will go to Catherine Wen's question. When will a recording of this panel be available to see? Very soon. We are still, of course, in the midst of things, wrapping towards conclusion. But yes, this has been an amazing resource in years past. And so we're really excited to share this afterwards, Catherine. Catherine Lee asks, when showcasing research in sections like additional information or supplemental essays, do you have any advice as to how to make enthusiasm for research shine through? Should we focus on illustrating motivations behind research, the steps we took to pursue research, or the lessons we learned from research?
A little bit of all of them, and it really depends on the question. And this is a great question, by the way. One thing I will say about the additional information, if there is no place other than the activities list for you to be able to display your research. For example, some colleges will take a research abstract, some will take a full research paper, some have whole sections where you talk about your research. If you're able to indicate that research there, you definitely want to highlight it there as well. In additional information, I would talk about if you have an abstract from your research paper, that's a great thing to put in. And then I would also discuss potentially in your essays why you did the research, how you came up with the topic, and why this particular topic was so exciting for you. Because remember, this wasn't a project assigned to you in a class, right? You weren't forced to choose among 4 different topics. This is something that you came up with a mentor, the 2 of you guys together, and potentially with guidance for at home or siblings or anybody else. But really thinking about why were you curious about this one particular idea? What were you hoping to learn from it? So I would focus on these 2 things. What did you love about it? And what did you learn? The technicalities of the research, you can definitely get that across, but the technicality is not actually the most exciting thing about the work that you're doing. It's really what did you get from it from a admission standpoint. It's what did you get from it? It shares with me, wow, when you're in class, you're going to really participate in discussions beautifully. You're going to come up with really unique ideas. You're going to get involved in research happening on my college campus. And you're not just going to go down this individual pathway that everyone else is going to follow. You're going to really take strides to find projects that are more appealing to you, and potentially even create research projects on campus. So really focus on what you learned and what you loved.
Excellent advice. Thank you. I'm going to invite other people to post questions, but in the meantime, I also wanted to share a personal story just about to illustrate Purvi's point about the directions that you don't know research will take you. Thinking about that student that started a project on water that ended up becoming a 4-year experience. When I first started thinking about graduate school, I was so in love with skiing and with photography. And those on the face of it seem like pursuits that are probably not things that you would research. Those are things that you do as hobbies or as sports that are enriching. But just becoming fascinated with the history brought me to start researching early photographs from the Alps, very early, like in the 1800s, and how they were used not only as ways of proving that mountains were in the shape they were or as high as they were, but they started to be used for political purposes as well, to be shown to foreign diplomats, to be bound up in albums and volumes, to be shared with other politicians around the world to sort of extol the natural virtues of the countries where they were from. And that research project brought me to Switzerland on a Fulbright. Later, it brought me to the Arctic Circle for my research on my dissertation at Stanford, looking at photographs of glaciers from the 19th century. And so in addition to pursuing those things that are so interesting, the twists and turns can lead to amazing adventures down the line. So I just wanted to share that and say that it's been, as Purvi was saying, just sort of a pivotal experience for me in following the paths that that I wanted to based on my interests and passions, and the adventures that just happen unexpectedly as you pursue them.
And what great stories to tell, right? I always tell my students, in your professional life or when you're an adult, you're going to have your career, and obviously amazing stories to tell from that, but you can still have interests outside of your career. And, you know, that can be very, very diverse. And because you want to continue to be a naturally curious, intellectual person, lifelong learning is something I really advocate for and really support. So it's amazing, right? To be a well-rounded individual, even not just to get into college.
Okay, Purvi, I know that we've talked about this before.
Yeah.
We see all of these amazing student projects today, and some of them are deeply humbling. So many of you have created things that I could never imagine creating at my age, let alone while I was in high school. And so many of you are inspiring us to think about, well, what would we, in fact, as lifelong learners, love to jump into? So I'd love to ask you, Purvi, what would your Polygens project or your independent research project be if you had to start?
So I have three answers for
All
this.
right.
And I definitely thought about this. Whenever my students are embarking on a research project, I ask myself, I'm like, what would I want to study? So I do want to do one of three things. One, I'd really love to know if people have a stronger affiliation or love of TV shows that they binge watch versus ones that they watch over like every week over an extended period of time. Like what's the psychological long-term effect there? Other project, I have naturally become more introverted as I've gotten older. And I'm really curious about how introverts and extroverts consume social media differently. So I find myself more as an observer or commentator or commenter, but I tend not to post. And I'm just really curious how much of that is affiliated to a personality trait. The third one would be a little bit more related to my profession. I'm increasingly curious to know if there is a correlation between a student's spirituality and their college admission success. Because I'm starting to see the strong influence that spirituality is having, not necessarily religion per se, but the community that comes with being spiritual or a belief system or a value system. And I'm wondering how that's now being conveyed in the admissions process and how that might lead to students being more grounded. So that would be two more personal interests and one a little bit more professionally oriented.
Wow, fascinating. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
It makes me think that we should find time for you to chat with my wife. She was really interested when she was in school about those questions of interaction socially online. And so she worked at a lab to do fMRI, brain scan studies on what lights up when people interact in certain ways. And now she's a designer at YouTube. And so
Amazing.
sort of unexpectedly, again, the twists and turns that research will bring you on. We have 3 minutes left. Julia asks a great question that's a little bit more practical, so let's make sure we have time to dig into it.
Sure.
How do you best show your transferable or non-cognitive factors on college applications?
Yeah, really great question. So there are several different areas where these skills will get demonstrated. So first are letters of recommendations, and why these are so important. Sometimes students don't really think how important these are, but they're so important, is that teachers who have seen you or your child on a day-by-day basis will be able to comment on several of these different factors. And what we tell students is that when they're communicating with their teachers about their letters of recs, to not just highlight, oh, this is the assignment I got an A on, or I did really well on this exam, but I really, really enjoyed this one project, or this project was really challenging for me, and this is how I got beyond it. I really appreciated your guidance when you were telling me, how I could study differently. And so just reminding teachers of those experiences are really fantastic. And these are the factors that teachers actually usually focus on versus just like, great student, works hard. Like those are important, but teachers will do it. Your counselor might touch upon this also in the secondary school report, although you may not know your counselor as well, and that's okay. But outside of that, your essays are a really fantastic place to show these. The biggest change I recommend to students when I'm looking at their essays is I often tell them, you're just telling me what you did. You're giving me a laundry list of your activities, or you're putting your resume in more paragraph format, but I'm literally learning nothing new about you that I didn't already know from your activities list. So this is where you want to show, your creativity, ability to communicate, maybe even vulnerability. So really thinking about your essays and digging deep, not just into what you did, but what you got from the experience, whatever the experience might be, how you moved beyond it, how you learned from it, how it changed your perspective, or how it even changed your behavior. And then the activity section, that is a place where often people are very like, I did this. And again, great, you definitely want to convey that, but at the same time, using it as a place to show some of these other things. I had to work with my team to resolve problems. And this is how I did that. Cool. That is great for me to know that when you were co-president of whatever club, not only were you just like leading meetings, but you were resolving disputes. Like that's important. You're a strong communicator. You're showing leadership. That's amazing. So try to also get that across there. So it's really in how you word things on the application itself. And again, I think those, make the strongest impact.
Thank you so much. That's really excellent takeaways for those students. We have one more question from Catherine, which I am actually happy to answer myself because this is something that we talk about a bunch. Catherine asks, if we want to continue developing our research in college, how do you suggest we ask for help? And who should we ask for help? Professors who are already doing research in the field or peers who can offer new perspectives? Catherine, this is a fantastic question. And one of the reasons that I'm excited to answer it is that before joining Polygens, I managed a research lab for undergraduates at Stanford. And the people who had already had research experience when they arrived were so well trained and so ready to jump in to make great contributions to faculty research that they became leaders amongst their peers and sort of helped others learn the ropes of what proper research methodologies are, what proper citations are, the complexities of cleaning data, that sort of thing. So when you get there, you will have this amazing experience in your back pocket about the research that you did with an expert in the field. And so when you go to approach a professor wanting to continue that work, basically share what you've shared today at the symposium. You can say, listen, I did research with this person in this field from this university asking this question using this methodology. When you start to tick all of those boxes, then people will know that you've already learned the ropes and that you are not only able to jump in and make good contributions, but that you're clearly excited to do it. And so I think that that is a great place to start. The same goes for email outreach if you don't have the chance to talk to someone in person. Making those messages very concise and clear, not, oh, I like the field of neuroscience broadly, and so I want to do neuroscience research. I worked with this person doing this, and I know what the major debates within this subfield of neuroscience are. The more specific and focused you can be, the more you can show your expertise in that space and your eagerness to contribute. So great questions, and I'm really excited for you to be able to continue your work once you get to college and beyond. Okay. We are just a little over time, and Purvi, I would love to continue talking to you all day. I know that you have so many students with fascinating projects. In the interest of time, because we'll have our concluding address coming up, I just want to say thank you so much for your expertise, for your advice, and for your encouragement for all of us to be lifelong learners, to be curious, and yeah, to continue with these projects that are both personal interests and also professional. So we're so grateful that you could join us.
Thank you so much. It's always fun to come to the symposium.
Great. Well, I'll wave goodbye to everybody and wish you a very wonderful conclusion to the day. We have one more concluding talk coming up. Bye.